Hi, everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's profoundly changed my journey, and I think it holds tremendous potential for those of you who are navigating what I call the quiet pivot of midlife. If you like this conversation, go ahead and like, subscribe, share, and for sure comment. I'm interested to knowing how you feel about this topic. For those of you joining me today, if you're not familiar with me, I have 25 years of a corporate career before transitioning into coaching, with 20 years of another parallel career of running a yoga program and as a practicing yogi and as a teacher. Despite decades of doing this spiritual work and having a meditation practice, I found myself struggling with certain patterns that kept me from, experiencing true fulfillment. Isn't that what life's all about? Today, I want to talk to you about positive intelligence and how it's become the missing piece that decades of other personal development work couldn't quite provide, particularly for professionals in midlife seeking more meaning without completely dismantling what they've built. For years, I approached personal development work through the lens of limiting beliefs, thinking my core issues were about not feeling worthy of love or believing that success was for other people, not for me. Well, this work was valuable at the time. It didn't fully address the persistent patterns that kept showing up in my life. When I discovered positive intelligence, it really gave me a powerful framework to understand what was really happening. I identified three primary saboteurs: the high achiever, the restless, and the avoider. These saboteurs profoundly shaped my journey, and I realized that they'd been at play all of my life. As I tried to build the passion for my yoga into a profession, for example, they were there. So let me share what this actually looked like. My high achiever constantly pushed me into creating new and better yoga training programs and other certifications. Nothing ever seemed to be enough for me. I was always pushing for more, and more, and pragmatically never pausing to properly evaluate and acknowledge what I had accomplished. My restless saboteur, on the other hand, had me continuously seeking the next approach, the new shiny ball that would, finally bring some success. I jumped from one strategy to another without fully implementing any of them, to be quite honest. And perhaps most damaging was my avoider. I avoided seeking guidance on things that I didn't know about, like running a business effectively. I avoided facing the reality that my approach wasn't really working, and I avoided acknowledging the toll that it was really taking on me, as my day job ended up supporting my passion project rather than the other way around. The same pattern followed me when I left the corporate world and began my coaching career. I jumped from one coaching program to another. I was seeking this magic bullet that would, somehow make everything work, but never doing the necessary inner work. My hyperachiever assured me that with enough effort, I could make anything work. My avoider, though, kept me from facing the hard truths about what was actually going on. And my restless saboteur, it had me program hopping rather than completely committing to any one particular path. The result, of course, was exhaustion, depletion of resources, a frustrating sense of running in circles, and despite all of my efforts and good intentions, not really succeeding at all that much. My discovery of positive intelligence wasn't through some dramatic moment of clarity. It was actually quite serendipitous. I noticed a posting on LinkedIn about a grant program for coaches looking to enhance their skills. And when I read the description, it really resonated with me. And despite being a meditator for some 30 years, I sensed that there was something here that I needed, something that was going to help me grow. What surprised me was how much positive intelligence revealed despite my decades of spiritual work. As a longtime meditator and a yoga teacher, I thought I had a pretty good handle on that inner landscape stuff. But the PQ framework showed me a lot of blind spots that I hadn't recognized. And that was kind of a shock. The concept of saboteurs, it actually gave me a language of understanding some of these patterns that had been invisible to me. I knew they were there, but I didn't quite identify them. I realized what I thought was my intuition telling me, oh, you'll find real intimate love later in life. That was actually my avoider. My avoider saboteur was protecting me from having to heal the pain from my childhood with an avoidant father. For the first time, I could see how these saboteurs had been really running a significant portion of my life. And it wasn't because I lacked discipline or commitment, but because I lacked awareness of how they operated and the tools to intercept them effectively. The practice of PQ reps, these simple present moment awareness techniques, have been transformative despite their simplicity. As someone who has practiced meditation for decades, I was surprised at just how powerful these brief exercises were in terms of shifting my state. What I'm noticing is that I'm no longer so hard on myself. I'm giving myself more room to breathe, to relax, and to not be so consumed by my to-do lists. And all of those practices of efficiency that many coaches have advocated for. I'm more trusting of myself, my decisions, and my worth. I can be in sage mode more than saboteur mode, and that makes life truly fulfilling. Here's a profound example of how this works. It's a recent conversation I had with my 89-year-old mother who is living with dementia, still functional, but has dementia. We needed to discuss her last wishes, her funeral details, and it's a conversation that could have easily triggered me on multiple levels. I could sense her vulnerability. I could see her as a young child, and this gave me much more empathy in the situation, more so than I've ever accessed before. Another significant area of change has been my approach to intimate relationships. For years, I believed my avoidance to this kind of a deeper connection was somehow spiritual. I was meant to find love later in life, as I previously said. But with PQ, I recognized that no, this was actually my avoider saboteur, not wanting to heal the pain of those childhood traumas. This awareness has opened new possibilities for connection that I had been unconsciously closing for so many years. As a yoga teacher and breath expert, PQ reps really resonated with me. I love how the practice bridges my existing knowledge with these new insights. Let me share with you a few of these most powerful practices that, they've worked for me and I think they'll work for you as well. We can start with tactile awareness, and this is simply rubbing the index finger and the thumb together. If you close your eyes while you're doing this, it's really powerful. There's a remarkable efficiency in getting out of my head and into my body immediately with this little technique. The simplicity is what makes it so accessible to anyone, anywhere, anytime. Another thing that we can do is sound awareness. So moving our attention to distant sounds, so far away sounds, and eventually allowing for awareness of sounds nearer to your body. And again, if you do this with your eyes closed, you're much more attuned to it. So this is a technique I've used in yoga over the years, but I find that the PQ treatment of it gives it a little bit more power. Let's also look at tension and releasing. So deliberate tensing of the body and feeling that tension and then releasing it, it reveals how much tension we habitually hold. The contrast between tension and the release and the letting go, that creates an immediate body awareness that's incredibly powerful. Mindful eating is another example of how this can be incredibly interesting and uniquely powerful. So slowing down, putting the food in your mouth, feeling the textures of the food in your mouth against your upper palate, feeling and sensing all of those flavors on your tongue, and then deliberately chewing slowly, gradually. This transforms a routine activity into a powerful practice. How cool is that? One particularly practical benefit I've discovered in using PQ reps is with sleep disruption. So sometimes I'll have insomnia, bouts of insomnia. When my sleep is disrupted, I find that doing PQ reps in those moments of awakeness will really help to bring me back to sleep. And this is really a profound thing when you think that we're living in an era where there are so many of us that struggle with sleep. I'm really enjoying introducing PQ reps to my coaching clients as well. And the results are quite fabulous. One of my clients who experienced an extreme burnout from a high-level administrative position, even to the point where he was negotiating his buyout package with a lawyer, I introduced to him midway through our coaching journey the PQ system because I realized for him it was going to be really important to build a stronger foundation. Otherwise, the coaching work we were doing is kind of like building castles on sand. There's not necessarily a strong enough foundation to see that work continuing forward. And when I explained this to him, he really appreciated that and embraced the PQ approach because he understood he didn't want those saboteurs to come back and haunt him and to disrupt any efforts he was making for change. The process has been tremendously helpful for him, and it provides a framework that makes sense for his experiences and practical tools for moving forward. I also introduced another client to the PQ grant program that I was enrolled in because as he's moving forward to become a coach himself, I knew that this was going to be the precise tool that would make his coaching elevated to that higher level. What I've learned is everything in personal development and growth work is experiential. In the decades of the yoga teaching that I've done and using Ayurveda as a tool to support the yoga teaching, I've always emphasized that you need to explore techniques, new techniques, with consistency for a period, and usually 7 days is enough. And then let that energy of the experience speak for itself. It will tell you whether this is something you need to do or not, rather than your intellect. The same applies for PQ. Doing these practices infrequently or randomly, you're not going to achieve much. But following the use of the app that's involved and making these simple techniques part of your daily routine, it creates profound change. And it does that in short order, which is super exciting. It can impact your relationships, your performance, and your well-being almost immediately. I've not seen anything like it. Let's take a moment for reflection now. I invite you to consider what saboteurs are most active in your life right now, particularly in this stage of midlife transition. So maybe grab a piece of paper and a pen, or use a note app on your phone if that's the case. And I'm going to pose a few questions. Do you recognize the hyperachiever in yourself? That's that voice that's always pushing for more, and it's never satisfied with what you've accomplished. That's the hyperachiever. Perhaps there's the restless saboteur, and that's that constant seeking for different approaches and other distractions rather than staying the course. Does the restless have a stronghold on you? Another is the avoider. So this is the steering clear of difficult conversations, of emotions, or realities that really need to be faced. Is the avoider playing in your life right now? What about the controller? This is that part that needs everything to be going according to plan and struggles with uncertainty. Is the controller playing out for you right now? Maybe the pleaser, that putting everyone else's needs ahead of your own. Is the pleaser playing out in your life right now? So I welcome you to pause the video and take a moment to reflect on each of those. I'll meet you back here. So I hope that was insightful and you were able to discern how some of these saboteurs might be impacting your current life, whether that's your performance, whether that's your relationships, or your well-being. It may well be all three of those. Now I'd like to move to sharing something personal that I hope will resonate with you. The relationship I had with my parents was certainly not great. My father was largely absent, and when he was around, he was psychologically abusive. When he left our household when I was 8, I had some deep scarring psychologically, and sadly, my mom wasn't in a position to really guide us and parent us well and demonstrate love effectively. From this childhood, I developed a very strong avoidant tendencies that have plagued me through my adult life. I would tell myself I'm stronger alone. I don't need anyone. I can figure this out myself. And these beliefs have negatively impacted my life in countless ways. And positive intelligence has really helped me to see that a lot more clearly. Despite achieving many things professionally, I never fully celebrated myself or even acknowledged my capabilities for that matter. Instead, my ego would make me act arrogantly and indifferent to others. And I was the aloof one all the time, the one who thought he had all the answers. And this was really just a mask of the uncertainty and the frustration that I felt within. Years of spiritual work, which felt amazing in so many ways, didn't unveil some of these deeper hidden issues. Whereas personal intelligence has helped me to see more clearly what's going on, enabling me to identify and catch my saboteurs and the judge when they raise their voices. It helps me to live more consistently in that sage mode, or in the yoga world, I would call that in connection with the higher mind. And this was an area that I diligently worked to cultivate through years of spiritual practice. But before PQ, these experiences were frankly fleeting. And now that I have access to this sage state more regularly and consistently and reliably, I'm elated. For men, like my client who I mentioned, navigating midlife transition, this approach may offer something uniquely valuable. Because many of the personal development approaches out there can sometimes feel a bit woo-woo or maybe too spiritually oriented, especially from professionals who built their lives on practical achievement. And not everyone wants to step into a therapist's office and spend months in therapy. Positive intelligence bridges the gap between the woo-woo and the practical. It's not the onerous self-reflection of therapy. It's evidence-based and practical while addressing these deeper psychological patterns that frankly keep us stuck. It doesn't require you to abandon your analytical mind either. It helps you to recognize when the mind is serving you or when it's sabotaging you. This framework helps to raise your baseline sage level while reducing the saboteur baseline. So that allows you to live with a greater sense of ease and flow. That sabotaging energy is not always pushing up and pushing at you. And this is when life starts to feel fulfilling and rich without any dramatic external changes. That's what's so powerful about this. My coaching program has always started with exercises around helping people to get more self-aware, to be more clued into who they really are before we move into the change work. And the beauty is that positive intelligence has taken this to a whole new level. It equips my clients with unparalleled tools that benefit them and will benefit them for the rest of their lives. If they commit to using them, of course, that's the thing. Because if they don't, they may get hijacked by their saboteurs. And this is always the risk of any self-development or self-growth work, that we don't commit. The PQ operating system is simple and easy to use, and these tools bring greater peace of mind to clients without exception in my experience. They're more impactful than many of the other approaches I've ever explored, and they can certainly enhance many of the practices you may already be doing. For me, it's yoga and meditation. They've amplified that by tenfold. Most importantly, they're accessible to clients who might resist approaches that do feel too spiritual or esoteric. Before we wrap up, I'd like to guide you through one more exercise to help you experience your sage perspective. Again, because experience is important. So let's do this. We'll take a moment to reflect on a current challenge you're facing in your life. It could be related to your career, maybe it has something to do with relationship, or maybe it's about your own sense of purpose. And once you've identified something, notice what saboteurs are saying about this situation. What are those voices in your head saying? What fears, what judgments are there? Are there some fixed beliefs that around that particular topic? Go ahead and write them down. Now I'm going to invite you to take 3 deep breaths. Maybe close your eyes. And just experience this deeper inhalation and exhalation, feeling grounded and connected in your body. And then take a moment simply to observe your body breathing. So the movement of your abdomen or your chest. And now that you're in a more centered place, if you want to keep your eyes closed, if you've closed them, ask yourself, how would my wisest self view this situation? How would my wisest self view this situation? And what possibilities might exist that my saboteurs aren't seeing? What lies might they be telling? What possibilities might exist that my saboteurs aren't seeing? What lies might they be telling? And how can this situation be turned into a gift? How can this situation be turned into a gift? And as you reflect, notice any shifts in your perspective and even in your emotional state. This is just a simple practice that demonstrates how quickly we can shift from saboteur to sage with the right awareness and tools. What I've shared here today really only scratches the surface of how the positive intelligence program and the PQ operating system work and can support your midlife transition. This framework offers both the psychological understanding and the practical tools to navigate the journey with wisdom and without reactivity. If today's content resonates with you, I invite you to explore my 7-week mental fitness program. This provides comprehensive training in these techniques, and it's designed specifically for professionals seeking meaningful evolution without disruption and evidence-based approaches that address both intellectual and experiential dimensions of transformation. You can message me directly, and I'll get you on my wait list for the next cohort that I'll be hosting. In the meantime, I encourage you to practice some PQ reps throughout the day for the coming week. Just these 10 seconds of simple movements, simple connection can help to shift and strengthen your capacity to choose from being in saboteur mode to evolving into sage mode of the brain and your life. Strengthening your capacity to choose your sage over your saboteurs. Thank you for joining me today. And if you found this valuable, share in the discussions what your takeaways are. You can go ahead and like, subscribe, and share this video as well. I look forward to seeing you again. And remember, you can take control of the saboteurs. I'd particularly like to hear about which saboteurs you've recognized in your own experience. So until next time, wishing you mental fitness and authentic fulfillment in your journey. See you soon.